My name is Daniel, and I spent most of my 58 years believing that if you build a sturdy enough life, the people you love won't be able to knock it down. I grew up in a town where your word was your bond and your name was your credit. My father, a man who smelled of cedar shavings and Old Spice, taught me that a man is only as good as the space he occupies and the way he treats the people sharing it. I followed those rules. I worked 30 years at the mill, saved my pennies, and maintained a reputation, so clean you could eat off it. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, I learned that a lifetime of building can be dismantled by a few strokes of pen and a heart full of entitlement. When I married Sarah 10 years ago, I knew I was taking on a package deal. Her son, Marcus, was 22 at the time, a young man who looked at the world like it was a vending machine that had cheated him out of a snack. He was restless, arrogant, and had a habit of talking about grind sets while sleeping until noon in the guest room I'd furnished for him. I tried to be a mentor. I offered him an apprenticeship at the mill. He said it was beneath him. I offered to help him start a landscaping business. He said he wasn't built for manual labor. Eventually, I realized Marcus wasn't looking for a ladder. He was looking for an elevator, and he expected me to be the operator. The centerpiece of my life was a 1972 Ford F-100. It wasn't just a truck. It was the last thing my father and I touched together before he passed. We spent 3 years in his cramped garage, skinning our knuckles on a manifold and debating the merits of a 3-speed transmission. When we finally turned that key and the engine roared to life, he'd slapped the dashboard and said, "Daniel, this metal is our history. Don't let anyone dent it." After he died, that truck became my sanctuary. On Sundays, I'd take it out to the ridge, sit on the tailgate, and feel like he was still there, leaning against a fender with a thermos of black coffee. Sarah understood the truck's value, or so I thought, but Marcus saw it differently. To him, it was vintage capital. He constantly nagged me to sell it to some collector he'd found online, or worse, let him drive it to network with his friends. I always said no. Marcus, I'd tell him, some things aren't for sale, and some things haven't been earned. He'd scowl, mutter something about me being stuck in the past, and retreat to the basement to play video games. The tension reached a breaking point when Sarah's health took a dip. It wasn't life-threatening, but it required expensive treatments and a lot of focus. I took extra shifts at the mill, coming home with bone-deep exhaustion just to make sure she had the best care. I was distracted, vulnerable, and tired. That was the window Marcus had been waiting for. One evening, I came home to find the driveway empty. The spot where the Ford usually sat, the spot I'd paved with my own hands, was just a bare patch of concrete. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline. I rushed inside, calling for Sarah, thinking she'd been rushed to the hospital and Marcus had used the truck. I found Marcus in the kitchen, casually scrolling through his phone while eating a bowl of cereal. "Where's the truck, Marcus?" I asked, my voice tight. He didn't look up. "Sold it," he said, as if he were talking about an old pair of shoes. "I found a buyer in Chicago. 5 figures, Daniel. It's for Mom's medical bills. You should be thanking me for stepping up." The world tilted. "You did what?" "That truck isn't yours. The title isn't my name in the safe." Marcus finally looked at me, and there was a glint of triumph in his eyes that made my blood run cold. "Check the safe again, old man. Mom gave me the code months ago. And the title? It had your signature on it. Clear as day. I did the paperwork at the DMV last week while you were at the mill. The buyer's transport trailer picked it up 2 hours ago. It's probably across the state line by now." I went to the safe. My hand shook so hard I missed the combination twice. When it clicked open, the folder was gone. My father's truck, my history, was gone. I walked back into the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. I never signed that title. "Marcus, that's forgery. That's a felony." Sarah walked in then, looking frail and conflicted. "Daniel, please," she whispered. "Marcus said you were overwhelmed. He said you talked about selling it to help with the bills. I thought you were just too proud to say it out loud." "I never said that, Sarah. I said, looking at the woman I'd spent a decade protecting, he lied to you. He stole from me." Marcus stood up, towering over me. "What are you going to do?" Call the cops on your own family? Mom's sick, Daniel. You want to put her through a trial? You're just a guest in this family anyway. My dad was the one she loved first. You're just the guy who pays the mortgage. Deal with it. That was the moment, the guest comment. It was an echo of every time I'd been shoved to the periphery of their lives while I was busy holding the center together. I didn't yell. I didn't swing. I just felt a click in my mind, like a deadbolt sliding into place. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw a man who thought kindness was a weakness he could harvest. You're right, Marcus, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I shouldn't put Sarah through a trial. He smirked, thinking he'd won. He went back to his cereal, convinced I was the same soft touch I'd always been. But I wasn't just a mill worker. I was a man who had spent 30 years learning how systems worked. I knew that Marcus was impulsive, and impulsive people always leave a trail of breadcrumbs. The next morning, I didn't go to the mill. I went to the bank. I had a small inheritance from my father that I'd kept in a separate account. Money I'd planned to use for Marcus's wedding one day, or a house for them. I moved it. Then I went to the DMV. I didn't report the theft yet. I asked for a copy of the transfer documents. When the clerk handed me the scanned image of the title, I saw it. The signature said Daniel Walker, but the D had a loop at the bottom that I never used. More importantly, the date of the signature was a day I was documented as being in the hospital with Sarah for her surgery. I had a literal alibi for my own hand, but I needed more. I knew Marcus's grind set involved a lot of bragging on social media. I spent the afternoon scrolling through his public profiles. It didn't take long. 3 days prior, he posted a video in a private bro group, which he'd forgotten I had an old burner account from when I was checking on his safety years ago. In the video, he was laughing, holding a pen over a piece of paper. Old man's too busy playing nurse to notice his legacy is being liquidated. He captioned it. He actually filmed himself practicing my signature. Most people would have gone to the police right then, but I knew the local sheriff. He was a friend of Marcus's biological father. Things would get complicated. No, I wanted a solution that was as permanent as the loss of my truck. I called my old friend Frank, a retired private investigator who specialized in white-collar recovery. I told him everything. Daniel, Frank said, he didn't just steal the truck. If he got into your safe, he has your social security number. He has your life. Check my credit, Frank. I said. 2 hours later, the news was worse than I imagined. Marcus hadn't just sold the truck. He'd used my identity to co-sign a $40,000 business loan for a shell company he'd registered in Delaware. He was planning to burn the money on a crypto scam he'd been talking about, leaving me with the debt. He figured by the time the first payment was due, he'd be rich and I'd be too old to fight back. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was an assassination of my future. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at a motel. I needed to be a ghost while I set the trap. I contacted the buyer of the truck, a collector in Ohio named Mr. Henderson. I explained the situation. He was a decent man, horrified to find out he'd purchased stolen property. I don't want any trouble, Mr. Walker, he said. The truck is in my warehouse. I won't touch it. Keep it there, I told him, and keep the payment in escrow. I'm going to give you the evidence you need to get your money back from the platform Marcus used. Then came the audit. Marcus thought he was the only one who knew how to use the internet. I logged into our shared home network remotely. I saw every site he visited. I saw him chatting with his associates about how he was going to pivot once the loan cleared. He had the loan documents saved in a cloud folder. I didn't delete them. I just added a small, encrypted file to that folder, a full confession of his forgery, disguised as a tax return file. On Friday, I returned home. Marcus and Sarah were having dinner. They looked like a happy family. Marcus even had the audacity to ask me if I'd calmed down about the truck. I said, sitting at the head of the table. In fact, I realize you were right. I've been too focused on the past. I think it's time we settled everything. All the finances, all the legacy. I want to make sure you and Sarah are taken care of. Marcus's eyes lit up. He thought he'd broken me. That's the spirit, Daniel. I knew you'd see reason. I'm going to need you to sign some papers, Marcus, I said, sliding a folder across the table. Just some transition documents for the house and the accounts. Since you're the man of the house now, you should have the responsibility. He didn't even read them. He was so high on his own perceived genius that he scribbled his name on 4 different pages. He didn't notice the fine print. One was a voluntary confession of unauthorized use of my identity. Another was a promissory note, backed by his future inheritance, to repay the value of the truck and the loan. The third was a lease agreement for the basement, one that gave me the right to evict him with 24 hours notice for illegal activity on the premises. The next morning, the illegal activity happened. I called the bank and the loan company. I didn't report fraud yet. I simply updated the contact information for the guarantor. I changed it from my cell phone to Marcus's. Then, I triggered a security alert. Marcus's phone started blowing up with fraud alerts and verification calls. He panicked. He tried to log into his cloud folder to delete the evidence, but I'd already changed the recovery email. He was locked out of his own crime. I walked into the living room where he was sweating over his laptop. Sarah was looking on, confused. Something wrong, Marcus? I asked. The bank is calling. There's some mistake with the loan, he stammered. There's no mistake, I said. I spoke to the loan officer this morning. I showed them the video of you practicing my signature. I also showed them the documents you signed last night, the ones where you admitted to the forgery. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the floorboards. Marcus looked at Sarah, waiting for her to save him. Mom, he trapped me. He's trying to ruin my life. Sarah looked at me, then at her son. For the first time, she didn't look frail. She looked exhausted. Daniel, is this true? Did he film himself? I played the video on the big screen TV. Marcus's own voice filled the room, calling me maintenance and laughing about liquidating the legacy. Sarah didn't cry. She just sat down. You stole his father's truck, Marcus. You used my name to lie to him. I did it for us. Marcus yelled. No, I said, standing up. You did it for you. And now, you're going to do something for the law. I've already spoken to the county attorney. Because you signed that confession last night, they're willing to offer you a deal, restitution and 5 years of probation, or we go to trial for felony identity theft and grand larceny. Mr. Henderson is returning the truck this afternoon. You're going to pay for the transport cost out of your business account. Marcus was shaking. The bravado had evaporated, leaving behind a small, scared boy who had realized the elevator was plunging. You can't do this. I'm family. Family doesn't shove a man off his own porch. I said, you have 1 hour to pack. Your lease for the basement is terminated. If you're still here when the truck arrives, I'm calling the sheriff to execute the eviction. Marcus left. He didn't have a choice. He moved in with his biological father, the man who had taught him that the world was a vending machine. Within a week, that man kicked him out too, because Marcus tried to grind his way into his father's bank account. The truck arrived on a Saturday. When the trailer door opened and that 1972 Ford F went on to roll down the ramp, I felt a weight lift off my chest that I didn't know I was carrying. It was dusty, but it was mine. I ran my hand over the fender, and for the first time in months, I felt my father's presence. Sarah and I are still together, but the house is different. There are boundaries now, lines drawn in permanent ink. She goes to counseling. I go to the Ridge. We don't talk about Marcus much, though I make sure his restitution payments are on time. Every cent goes into a scholarship fund for kids who actually want to learn a trade at the mill. A month later, I was sitting at a diner when I saw Marcus's father, Ray. He walked up to me, looking like he wanted to pick a fight. You destroyed that boy's future, Walker. He's got a record now. He can't get a real job. I took a sip of my coffee and looked him in the eye. I didn't destroy his future, Ray. I just stopped subsidizing his crimes. He's 32 years old. It's about time he learned that a name isn't something you use to get what you want. A name is something you earn by being someone worth knowing. Ray sputtered, but I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, climbed into my truck, and turned the key. The engine roared loud and honest. echoing off the brick walls of the town. I drove home, not as a guest and not as maintenance, but as a man who had finally reclaimed his seat at the head of his own life. The road ahead was clear, the tank was full, and for the first time in a long time, the silence in the cab was peaceful. I had lost the truck for a moment, but I had gained something far more valuable. The knowledge that my father was right. Metal is history, but the man behind the wheel, he's the one who decides where the story goes. And my story? It's just getting started.